One Piece chapter 1030. Now, surprisingly, the X Drake versus Apu plotline was something that we always had at the back of our minds because it's been a minute since we've actually seen these guys, and in this chapter we come to find out that Apu is offering X Drake some sort of temporary alliance, which isn't that surprising coming from Apu because, you know, once a snitch, always a snitch, and this is definitely within his character. And it seems like he even has a crew of numbers that are sort of allied with him in this whole thing, and I would imagine that these numbers aren't loyal to Kaido and are working for Apu. So again, with Apu, you can't really trust him, and obviously X Drake is aware of that. And so what we're seeing here is not really surprising. What I do wonder though is what plan of action does he have in mind, because here he sort of hinted of the idea of wanting to take Kaido down, but I think he's more so trying to get an answer from X Drake to see whether he would back up these Straw Hats if Kaido were to get taken down. And of course, just like CP0, he's also of the idea that whoever wins this fight, the winner is not exactly going to be in good shape, which gives him the chance to swoop in and take advantage. And this is very interesting because X Drake and Apu are sort of outliers in this whole thing. They don't belong to either group because in some way these guys are infiltrators. They don't hold strong connection to either side. Drake is for the Marines and Apu seems to be for himself. But regardless, this is definitely a very interesting chain of events, and I do wonder where this is heading. But somehow I feel like Apu is going to get the worst end of it, but we'll see what happens. Now moving on to Kinemon's side of things, and here we come to find out that Kinemon is actually alive, and strangely he shows up with only half of his body. And we'll get back to that as that ties back to Punk Hazard. Now first things first, I'm not really surprised at Kinemon still being alive because that was kind of expected. Again, I've talked about how it's very unlikely that any scabbards will die before the dawn happens because I feel like they have to see the dawn before any of them dies. And Kinemon being more of the important one out of all the scabbards, I didn't even think for a second that he was gonna die. So again, the whole Kaido thing and the moment that he had with Momo back in chapter 1015, I kind of think that gets devalued here because in a sense that was supposed to be like a sacrificial moment, not only for just Kinemon but also for Kanjuro and Akiku because there's some sort of build up to that. But here we are with Kinemon being alive and surprisingly Akiku and Kanjuro as well. Now the second thing we come to find out is that his body has apparently been cut in two, specifically with Law's ability, which is why he's able to move with half of his body. And again, this goes back to Punk Hazard. And so the explanation that we got here is that Law didn't completely reattach Kinemon's body, and that's why it was able to split. Now this seems to be extremely contrived and very convenient. I'm not sure why Oda chose to take this route. He could have just made Kinemon return without having his body cut up in two. We have an explanation that makes sense, but it doesn't really hold well when you take other things into account because now you'd have to think about all the people that Law cut up and being reattached by someone else. Will these people also have the possibility of their body splitting again? So yeah, I'm not sure why Oda chose this route, but he could be planning some sort of moment that involves Kinemon using half of his body. I think he's looking at the end result more so than the beginning. So I'm not sure where this is going, but again, overall I'm kind of disappointed, but I'm not surprised with the whole thing because that's usually what Oda does, and so I'm sort of used to it at this point, and it's whatever. And of course this is going to rack up some controversy in the community as well. Now when it comes to Kanjuro and Akiku, they seem to be alive as well. Now here Kanjuro gets a call from Orochi in which Orochi orders him to throw the castle into the abyss because at this point Orochi has no allies and thus has nothing to lose, so he might as well do as much damage as he can to both parties, and his intentions right now is to try and blow up the weapons that Kaido has in the basement of Onigashima, which Kanjuro responds by drawing a fire creature that burns everything on contact. And of course this creature seems to be heading towards the basement so that it can trigger some sort of explosion. Interestingly enough, the creature does look like Kanjuro's silhouette as a kid, so this is like Kanjuro's manifestation or his spirit embodied or something of that sort. And this scene is definitely being made out in a way where it seems like this is Kanjuro's last moments, but again, there's always going to be doubts and characters actually dying. As for Orochi, I'm not exactly sure where things are headed for him. It seems like he has no allies at this point in time and is just doing whatever damage he can to both parties before he dips. It would be interesting if he somehow encounters Komurasaki though, because we do know that she is somewhere in the castle. We also have to think about Denjiro as well. We haven't seen him in actually half a year's worth of chapters now, so I think the Orochi plotline will most likely involve Komurasaki and Denjiro, because these three characters are sort of intertwined with how some things came to be. So I think Denjiro might be responsible in dealing with Orochi. However, I do see Orochi surviving this whole thing. Now moving on to Kid and Law versus Big Mom. Easily the most interesting part of this chapter, as we got confirmation that both Law and Kid are awakened devil fruit users, which I think makes a lot of sense because unlike Luffy, who isn't reliant on his devil fruit, Kid and Law are more adept in using their devil fruit as they relied on it more so than Haki. And again, I did talk about Kid and Law showing awakening in this arc, which turned out to be true. Now it does seem like they are relatively new to awakening because they aren't used to it yet. And Law specifically states that he would only use it if he were near death because it burns too much energy to actually use in a real battle, which explains why they didn't use it on the rooftop. Individuals like Katakuri and Doflamingo seem to possess no weakness when it comes to their awakenings, but then again, we also have to think about Law and Kid's devil fruit, in which these fruits are completely different to Katakuri and Doflamingo's, and thus will have a different awakening condition. Law's awakening pretty much confirms that not all Paramecia awakenings are the same, which we already kind of guessed because not all fruits work the same way. And in the case of Law, his awakening allows him to create a room called Kroom, in which he's able to infuse his weapon with his room and attack Big Mom. And again, we're not sure how it works yet, but it seems to have an effect on a person's body similarly to Ganma knife, because Law here is actually able to damage Big Mom's body. And interestingly enough, this is the first time that we see Big Mom bleed from an attack, so this is a crazy feat for Law. And when it comes to Law's awakening, I think it's going to have a very high ceiling that probably eclipses a lot of devil fruits, because he does mention that his awakening influences a person's body in different ways. And I think the shockwave that he did was just one way that he can do damage to a person, or one way that he can affect a person. And so I think moving forward, we're going to see different abilities that he's going to use that are technically classed as awakening. So I'm excited for Law. When it comes to Kid, his awakening is what I thought it would be, which basically allows him to magnetize other objects and people to become a magnet. And I think this has serious potential because there could be a versatility aspect to it as well, which I will talk about in a separate video, because I did want to talk about awakenings and how they've been really kind of linear throughout the whole series so far. But when it comes to Law and Kid and how their awakenings work, we're going to see a new level or a different way to use awakening than what we've seen from the likes of Katakuri and Doflamingo. But I have to say that Kid did look pretty cool in this chapter, because he kind of reminded me of Pain from Naruto and how he used his ability, because now he's able to magnetize other people or even objects other than metal. He literally has free reign over anything at that point, so it's kind of broken when you think about it. And I personally don't think we've really seen what their awakenings are truly capable of yet, because this is just the start of them actually putting work on Big Mom. So we're going to see a lot more crazier things as we move forward in this fight. So I really like how their awakenings work, because I think it's going to show us a new side of awakening that we don't normally see. And if Kid and Law are getting awakening here, it is also a possibility that Luffy will get an awakening as well, and maybe through Luffy we might get some sort of gradual process as to how one awakens their devil fruit ability, because so far it's been very vague based on Doflamingo's words, right? So hopefully we get more clarity on awakening, because I think it's actually deeper than what has been given to us. But that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I would appreciate it if you dropped a like on this video. Comment down below what you guys think. Subscribe for more One Piece content on this channel. You can follow me on Twitter at FerroSpace. Latest Ferro, guys, and I will see you folks later. Peace.